All right, welcome into the Falcons Podcast. Garrett Chapman, pleased to be joined by JC Allen. You can give him a follow at JC Allen on Twitter. Also, he is the host for the Pirate Parlay Podcast, a Bucs reporter and writer for Bucs Game Day. Go give them a follow on Twitter. Go check out the podcast as well. But for right now, we got to talk a little bit of NFC South football. It's all part of our NFC South roundup just as we get into week one. JC, we're right there. We're right there in the thick of things, man. I know it's been a long off season, but I know we're absolutely excited up here in Atlanta, and I'm sure you are too down there. How's the off season been? How's it been treating you?
It's been good. For me personally, it's been great coaching my son's Pop Warner team. My daughter's in cheer for the same organization, so it's been a lot of fun watching their growth. For the Bucs, it's been a lot of fun watching their growth too, coming in from OTAs and mini camp into training camp and seeing, especially some of these rookies and how they grasp the system and even won some starting jobs. So yeah, it's been a great summer. Glad it's over. Labor Day marks the end of summer for me. I know technically not till September, weirdos, but it's time for football, and that's fall for me. So let's go.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And look, I know college football kicked off this past weekend, and this weekend we got NFL action back on our screens and in our lives, and I'm really excited about that one. One big thing here for Tampa Bay, just throughout the course of this last couple of weeks specifically, I'd say, it's the injuries. I know Tristan Wirfs, Chris Godwin, several more. Jalen McMillan is one. What is the overall health of this team heading into week one?
I think outside of those players, pretty good. There's still some questions about Christian Izien, their backup nickel cornerback and safety, dealing with an oblique injury, but it's more of a pain tolerance. I think they'll probably keep him out this week, even though he'll tell you, he told me he's ready to go. But it's more of like, oh, let's keep him out. Benjamin Morrison's another one, their second round pick. Obviously was banged up coming out of college. That's why he fell into the second round. But I think he's probably week 2 where he might start practice Wednesday. We'll know more. Once a week officially kicks off. Monday was a bonus practice. So, but I would say he's probably still a week away too. You don't want to rush him back either. But K-Dot and Tyke Smith, two of their starters one on offense, one on defense, they're back in the mix. So it's really just Tristan and Chris, going forward and monitoring that while Jalen's on IR and probably won't be back until after week 9 at some point. So.
Gotcha. Yeah. So look, I just know that. I mean, look, you got an all-pro left tackle and then in a Pro Bowl level wide receiver who could be missing for week 1 and potentially for a couple of weeks. But
absolutely.
Tampa's done a pretty decent job of building up depth specifically in that wide receiver room. Tell me a little bit about Emeka Egbuka. I know he's just as a college football fan, I was very familiar with his game up there at Ohio State, but he seems to have taken the world by storm down there in Tampa and had a pretty good summer. What have you seen from him?
Yeah, I think as advertised, I thought he was the most pro-ready receiver to be in the draft. I was shocked he fell to the Bucs at 19, not necessarily shocked they took him. I had Matthew Golden on my mind because I didn't think Egbuka would be there when I heard they were maybe interested in a wide receiver. But yeah, I don't really need to tell you what I think, just what Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Baker Mayfield, and Jason Light, they've all said, not Chris Godwin, but called him Chris Godwin Jr. Baker just called him Amon-Ra St. Brown. That's the type of player he is. He's in the right spots. He's running the right routes. The consistency is there. I think he's going to be a heck of a player for the Buccaneers and in this league. I wouldn't be surprised if he's in the Offensive Player of the Year conversation, especially with, no buzz around Cam Ward. He's got some running backs and some other wide receivers he'd be up against, but a season with 850 plus receiving yards, 8 touchdowns, 70 receptions, 70 receptions isn't out of the realm of possibility, even when Chris Godwin returns in week 5 or 6.
Yeah. And then kind of keeping it here on this wide receiver position. I know, look, you got 4 guys on that team who I would say are pretty damn good. It's the 2 specifically. The guys at the top, but Mike Evans, of course, he's had this very public chase for 1,000 yards every single season. And you had the big celebration and everything at the very end of last season. How much does he have left in the tank at this point? He's on the wrong side of 30. He's kind of making his way up. And I know that here in Atlanta, we have a ton of respect for him and just everything he's been able to do just through the kind of a carousel of quarterbacks. He's still been Mr. Consistent, right? And down there in Tampa. But how much does he have left in the tank at this point?
You think that going into training camp, how much does this guy really have left? And then he goes out there and he looks like midseason Mike. And it's just like, when's the drop off going to come? You're not hoping for it, but like you're just like shocked. When's it going to come? Because he looks like he's in midseason form out there. His and Baker's connection is just otherworldly, stronger than it's ever been. There's a big reason why you didn't see either of them in any of those preseason games, because they've looked so good in practice that there's no need to put an unnecessary risk out there. I would be surprised. I have him in my 10 bold predictions, having him get 1,000 yards by week 14 this year, instead of having to do the whole rigmarole of final play of the season type situation that came last year. And that's 71 yards per game in 14 games. And I think it's totally doable.
Yeah, I mean, especially in the wake of Godwin potentially being on the shelf for the foreseeable future,
Right.
just with everything else with that. And then you've got Baker Mayfield, of course, and this is a guy who had a career year last year. You know, I mean, Liam Cohen and everybody that, I mean, they're off. And I'll ask you about the new offensive coordinator here in just a second, because obviously it's a big talking point here nationally. But as far as Baker Mayfield's concerned, I mean, this is a guy who was top in the league and like across the board statistically, whether people realize that or not. I mean, the guy had 41 touchdowns last year. I mean, it was incredible. And I would know, I had him on my fantasy team. So I know he was pretty damn good. But how does he replicate that success? I mean, that was something that he hadn't quite put all the pieces together. But credit to Tampa for investing in him and finding some weapons and keeping him upright. But then, you know, kind of leaning on him. But how does he replicate this statistical success?
Yeah, I think there's an expectation there might be a bit of a drop off. Not much, but I don't think the Bucs are going to be as good as they were on third down last year, even though pretty much everyone in that staff that was responsible, Josh Grizzard, the new offensive coordinator, had a huge part of it in coming up with those third down plays. I think, you know, maybe a little bit of a drop off in the red zone might happen, but as far as Baker himself, and kind of goes hand in hand with the offensive coordinator change, there isn't much different on the offense. Like, it's pretty much staying the same offense. Some new verbiage and terminology, and definitely new wrinkles. And the biggest thing that changed for him and for the offense in general is just going to be the play sequencing. You know, it's going to be different than what Liam was doing. And can it be as successful? You know, can Grizzard, you know, be a successful play caller and, you know, utilize things for later to set things up later in games? And, you know, does he have that? And from everyone you talk to, he does. You know, you talk to Liam, he does. You talk to everyone on the coaching staff, he does. You talk to Mike McDaniel, he does. Those are some pretty smart people, and I trust their word. And I've seen what this offense can look like in practice. So I think Baker's in line for another strong season. I think, you know, MVP consideration shouldn't be thrown out there, thrown away completely. The one thing I think the Bucs have in their favor, and obviously not right away, but when they have everyone back, when they have Chris back, and they eventually have Jalen back, show me the tape of this offense with those 4 wide receivers, or even 3 wide receivers from last year. It's a completely new wrinkle. And even if there was no injuries and Godwin was ready by week 1 and McMillan didn't get hurt, like that, I think was the biggest chess piece that the Bucs had, especially early in the season, is that this is not the same offense. It is to an extent. We're running a lot of the similar stuff, but now we have this guy, and now you have to prepare for these 3 guys, these 4 guys, and who do you single and who do you double? You know, Devin Culp is a guy that they have in the tight end room who is as big as the tight end but runs like a receiver. You can't put a linebacker on him in most cases, so you have to drop a safety on him. And if you got someone like Rashad White in the backfield as well, with 3 wide receivers split out, it becomes very difficult of, okay, if I got to resort a safety to this guy, my linebackers to Rashad White, am I going to just have no safety help over the top and double cover Mike Evans? Well, now Chris Godwin and Emeka Egbuka are one-on-one. So, you know, they have the addition of Egbuka changes everything for the offense, I feel like, and that trickle down or trickle up effect goes directly to Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, and look, you mentioned the third down conversion percentage. That was the 6th best in NFL hit. I believe it was over the last 25 years. I want to say I saw that on The Athletic. I mean, that was incredible. I mean, it was one of the biggest reasons why Tampa was able to come in and swipe the division from the Falcons. That and the fact that they just sort of fell apart down the stretch. But that's a different discussion we'll get into a little bit later. But no, I mean, it is the 3rd offensive play caller for Tampa in the last 3 years. I mean, this is a first-time play caller, you know, and I think that that was like one of the big differences, I guess you could say, from years past. But I mean, this is also somebody who was talented enough that Liam Coleman and company, they wanted to take him with him to make him the offensive play caller over there in Jacksonville. So now I know that he's never called plays before. Is there concern with that, or is that just something because I mean, we saw what happened with the Falcons last year with Zach Robinson. It took him a little bit of time before he actually kind of really settled into the role of being the guy setting up an offense and calling plays. But I mean, he seems like he's sharp. He has the connections with the right people, like Ben Johnson and everybody else. He's crossed paths with those guys in the past. What kind of adjustment period, if any, do you see for him?
Yeah, so this is not the Buccaneers' first kind of rodeo. Dave Canales never called plays in the NFL. And then while Liam Cohen was the OC in title with the Rams, he never called plays. That was McVay. He did call plays for 2 games, but those are 2 games that that he probably wishes he had back. So there was really no NFL play calling experience. He called plays in Kentucky, but not at NFL. So this is, third guy who's really never called plays at the NFL level. So what Todd Bowles did with David Canales and has done ever since, and hopefully he won't have to do next year, is a lot of call-it periods during practice. So a lot of teams go out there with a practice. These are the things we want our offense to see. This is the things we want our defense to see. This is what we're going to see in the game. This is what we need to practice. And they go out with scripts. They were doing a lot of call-it periods where it was just live, baby. Like, here's my personnel, here's your personnel, match up, and let's go. And that gave him a lot of confidence and gives the team a lot of confidence that, hey, we can throw any of these scenarios at you, and they can plan okay, we're doing a call-up period, situational, 2 minutes, whatever. And Todd is known for his exotic looks. He's going to throw the kitchen. He's going to throw things that he hasn't shown in 10, 15 years in a game, but he'll just throw it at him in a practice and just say, hey, deal with this, So those things helped him tremendously. And then I'm sure there will be an adjustment. And again, like I mentioned earlier, sequencing is the biggest thing that, I think he can get to the right place. He's got enough talent. I'm not worried about him getting to the right plays. It's how is he getting to those plays, and how is that sequencing, and how is he utilizing X, Y, Z to set up, ABC later. So those are the things that I really look for him as growth early on in the season. But there's so much talent. There's just so much talent on this team. It's not saying that they don't need a brilliant offensive coordinator. I think he's going to be one. But even if he struggles, I think they'll still be in a good spot.
Gotcha. JC Allen here. Go ahead.
Just to touch on that too. And Baker has a lot of freedom at the line too. That's something that Liam Cohen implemented last year with the system. So he's coming to the line with 2-3 plays, at least 2 plays he can change into, which helps him a lot too. If he doesn't necessarily like what Grizzard's doing, as he has an adjustment period.
Gotcha. No, I mean, look, it makes good sense. I mean, and look, the talent is undeniable down in Tampa. JC Allen is joining me here on the Falcons podcast. We're doing a whip around the NFC South. We're previewing all of the upcoming opponents down there in the NFC South for our Atlanta Falcons. Give him a follow at JC Allen NFL. He's a Bucs reporter and writer for Bucs Game Day. Give them a follow as well at Bucs Game Day to kind of keep up to date on everything going on with our, I guess, colleagues, I guess you could say, down south. He's also the host of the Pirate Parlay podcast. You can check that out. We'll be doing our Falcons preview with you here coming up in a little bit, so we'll get that out there here in just a bit. One more question here on the offense, and then we'll flip it over to the defense. I'm just fascinated with this Buccaneers offense just in general, if you couldn't tell, JC. And you look, I mean, you have career years across the board. Mike Evans does what he does, of course. Baker, we talked about already. But Bucky Irving, my God, and this guy, he comes out of nowhere seemingly, has a career year and he explodes onto the map. And is that somebody else that you can see really replicating his success here in year 2?
Yeah, absolutely. I think to start the season, it took him a while to kind of get adjusted to everything, NFL speed and just, learning the playbook in and out. And you really saw him take off kind of at the same time when, and hats off to Liam Cohen. And another reason why the Bucs are so high on this staff and Josh Grizzard is they were trying to do a lot of that stuff that Sean McVay does and Kyle Shanahan, the outside and mid-zone run. And the Bucs, the way their offensive linemen and their running backs are just better blocking and have better vision and they're just better in duo and gap and those, strong type of schemes and stuff like that. So they made that adjustment, a philosophical change on their offense and what they wanted to accomplish. And credit to Dave Canales, he did it, but it took him way later into the season, and he had his other issues. But they made that philosophical change, and that's when you really saw Bucky Irving start to take off because he's just so much better running in those style of running schemes. So I think it's going to be, it might take a little second. Tristan Wirfs is out. He's not the runner the blocker that Charlie Heck is. I don't think many are in the league. But I think they'll be fine in the long run. And he'll be able to replicate that success. They've got a really strong rushing room with him and Rashad White. And I wouldn't be surprised if early on they kind of, it's more of like a split load. And then as the season heats up, Bucky probably takes over. And I think more of that's just for, you don't want to wear anyone down in the first, legs of the season. Especially, you have that week 9 bye, you recover that. And then maybe it's Bucky time, all Bucky time from there.
Yeah, makes sense. Defensively, I mean, Todd Bowles, you mentioned how he does all those exotic looks, and that's what he's known for. I know that he's given the Falcons fits in the past, and just overall, though, it seems like this is a unit that the Buccaneers really invested into in the draft. I mean, you have 3-4 new faces there in that room. You also go out and add like a Hassan Reddick and guys like that. What have you seen from this unit just throughout the course of the summer? It seems like you have a lot of veterans there, but you have a lot of new faces as well. Todd Bowles is known for spicy defenses. So, what are you expecting there?
Yeah, I think they have what they've been missing, to be honest with you, is a dominant pass rusher, a guy who can kind of flip the script, and, teams really have to kind of game plan for and know where he's going to be. And when you add into that mix Vita Vea, who, I just saw something that ESPN's top 100 rankings of players, there was their biggest snubs, and Vita Vea was on there. And a random NFC coach said, the first thing when you look at this defense is, how do we stop Vita Vea? Mm-hmm. So he's still a guy people are game planning for. Antoine Winfield back healthy, a guy people have to game plan for. And then Levante David is still a guy people have to game plan for. So when you have guys at each key position that you feel teams are going to have to game plan, and I think Zion McCollum will be there real quick at cornerback, just because of the success I think he's going to have this season. And even Jacob Parrish, too, with his ability in the slot. They really made a concentrated effort to fix their depth issues and strengthen their strengths. And I think they did that with Hassan Reddick in a major way, because now if you double team Vita Vea, and no offense to whoever was there, in the years prior, it's not a big deal, right? Okay. Because that edge rusher is not going to bring enough juice. With Hassan Reddick there, now you're giving a one-on-one hit to Hassan Reddick, a one-on-one to Kalijah Cansey, and a one-on-one to Yaya Diaby, or you're having to utilize a tight end to chip, or leaving a back end to protect, leaving one potential playmaker or weapon in for blocking purposes. So what that's going to do is going to open things up for everybody else as far as coverage. They take a little bit more risk, errant throws, get into the quarterback. And it's just going to trickle down effect. And the Bucs had struggled getting home with 4 the last couple seasons because they've been missing that premier edge rusher. And Hassan Reddick's going to change the way the defense is played, just if he can just replicate what he did every year before the disastrous thing that happened with the Jets. But that's the Jets. So
it is the Jets. Yeah, no, definitely. Look, Hassan Reddick is. It was a bit of a malcontent last year. I think that's probably the nice way that you can put it.
You don't trade for someone who wants a contract and then don't give him
don't give him a contract. It was weird. The whole situation was strange. But he is 31 and he's
looked fresh.
But he looks fresh. That's the question. What does he look like?
Yeah, he's got juice. Like I said, he's opening things up for everybody else. Like, he's going up against Luke Gedeke a lot because that's the side he prefers to rush on. Against the right tackle on the left side, and he's been giving him fits. And again, he looks like he did. If you turn on the tape from the year before with the Eagles or when he was with the Panthers, that's the kind of guy, the impact he's making. And again, if you're focusing, you got to focus attention. You got to pick where. Same thing with the offense and the wide receivers. That's how I feel about the defensive line and that front four is like, where are you going to focus that extra attention? Because things are opening up for everybody else. And if it's not Hassan Reddick, getting to it, it's Yaya screaming around the other end, or it's Kalijah getting skinny, beating his one-on-one. And I think that's the biggest thing that I've seen so far in camp is his ability to not only make an impact as an edge rusher, but also the impact he has on that front four as a whole with everybody else. And I think that's why this front four is just going to feast this season.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is a rush defense that finishes top 10 in rush defense, and I mean, the secondary left a little bit to be desired there, but ultimately, I do think that the Bucs were pretty aggressive in trying to remedy those issues. Have they? Like, do you think that that's something that they're going to be better at in 25?
Yeah, I think cornerback definitely went from a weakness to a strength. You invest a couple draft picks in there. And you bring in a veteran like a guy like Kindle Vildor, who's got some versatility, one of the most physical cornerbacks in the league, grading out by PFF. Bucs like their cornerbacks to be physical and run support, and he's really showed out during camp and even preseason with interceptions. So I feel like they feel comfortable there. Last year they had to throw Josh Hayes and Tyreek Funderburk, an undrafted free agent, a career special teamer in there. Now they have a different layer with Benjamin Morrison, who he's been out for a while, but expect him to be back soon. And there's potentially a chance that he overtakes Jamel Dean at some point this season. I think Zion McCollum, a big reason it was injuries last year too, man. There was not a time where, Zion wasn't playing next to Antoine Winfield. So he's got a rookie or an undrafted guy in there. And maybe he can't do the same gambles or risks that he would normally take because he doesn't have Antoine Winfield behind him. And, vice versa, with some of the other situations. So I feel like that really kind of hampered this team's consistency and ability to make plays. Only 7 interceptions is just not good. It's not enough. And the biggest thing about this preseason is, in camp they've been making the plays, but it also translated into games, and they led the NFL this preseason in interceptions. Doesn't matter because it's preseason, but seeing that translate over, I think, is what they really wanted to see. And they've got everybody back there healthy who are their starters. They've got Jacob Parrish, who they added, I mentioned, who has just been lighting it up, who came into rookie minicamp and broke through with interceptions on both days, and has earned the starting role there. So I feel like they're in a much better place depth-wise. I feel like they're in a much better place with the guys who are developing. I think that's an area that probably was a weakness last year and maybe is more of a strength this year on the defense.
JC, what's the X factor for this team in 25? I know this is, the Bucs have won 4 consecutive NFC South titles. I mean, what's the X factor, and then do they do it for a 5th time?
I think there's no X factor like staying healthy, and I think that's a cop out way to answer. But I think they've done a lot of things to try to in the training room to stay healthy. But if you look at the Bucs when they went to the Super Bowl and won it in 2022, and then again in 2020, they were one of the healthiest teams in the league. I think they have the talent across the board. They're returning all of their starters on the offensive line. Once Tristan comes back, they're returning all their skill players and adding something that brings a new wrinkle to this offense, and have a guy like Devin Culp who can even, who's had a great summer, who can add a different dimension as well. The defense, they've added that depth across the board. If I had to name a player on defense, the X factor is going to have to be Servassier Dennis. It's an area they struggled mightily, and all too well in that Thursday night football game, how much they attacked the middle of the field. And, with Servassier Dennis, there's a lot of, it's so funny when people talk about him, because when he came when the Bucs drafted him and he was coming in the league through the draft, the biggest question about Servassier Dennis was, how will he do in coverage? We've seen him step the run. He had 9 sacks his senior season. We know those facets of his game. How can he do? And now whenever anyone talks about him, especially with the Bucs, especially down in Tampa, they're like, "Oh, we need Servassier Dennis. His coverage is so good." It's like we weren't even talking about that, and now he's known as like a coverage linebacker down here in Tampa, which is crazy to me. But that's how good he is, and he still brings all those other facets to the team. Levante David said, and I asked him on my podcast, I'm like, is Servassier Dennis, can he be the heir apparent? Can he be the guy who replaces him? And he says, absolutely. There's nothing I haven't seen, that don't think he can be the guy. I'm not going to argue with Levante David, so I'll take that for what he says, and I think he's the biggest X factor. But it truly is, to me, is injuries. If they can avoid the injuries, they'll probably have a slump here and there or whatnot, but we know they can bounce back out of that. Again, I think regression probably on third down, end zone, but if they can just kick the injuries like they have been the last couple of years, I think they have a chance to not only go to the Super Bowl, win the division, but potentially win the Super Bowl.
Dang. Hey, look, that's high expectations, and I appreciate that. No, but I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Last one here for you. Just you're from the outside looking in. What are your perspective here of the Atlanta Falcons, and then thoughts on Sunday, just in general? Week 1 is just a few days away at this point. I know that it's not going to decide the division by any stretch of the imagination, but I feel like both teams have something to lose here, or something to gain, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Look, the Falcons swept the series last year, but they choked away the division. So 2 questions, I know a 2-parter question right there, but from the outside looking in, your perspective on the Falcons, and then just some thoughts on Sunday, and which team, I guess, comes in here with the bigger edge.
Yeah, so I think with the Falcons, it's kind of there's question marks. There's a lot of question marks, and there's noted talent, and I think you can see the talent obviously on the offensive side with Bijan Robinson, Drake London. If someone can figure out how to use Kyle Pitts properly, and there's certainly some star players on the offensive line there as well. But the question is ultimately Penix, right? Only 3 games. The league hasn't seen a lot of him. He's going to be seeing a lot of the league soon. How does that change now that there's film and people have been dissecting him all summer, not just in a short week? How does that change how he goes about his way? The injury right now situation at right tackle, technically, I call it left tackle when you have a left-handed quarterback, is really scary, I think, if you're a Falcons fan. And the fact that it's not going to be over in week 2 or week 3, from what it sounds like, is even more terrifying. I know there's a lot of support for your guys. Same thing out here with Charlie Heck. There's going to be a lot of support through the media and through the team, and we trust them. But that's a huge if and a huge loss there, especially when you consider that now you have to have a tight end over there, most likely, especially when going up against a guy like Hassan Reddick. You're going to need a tight end to chip or leave a back in, and that it's going to mess the way you want to. Same thing with the Bucs. It's going to mess up the way you want to call plays in the beginning of the season. So that's going to be a hump. And then the adjustment period of, okay, this is what we were doing now. Now we have our right tackle back. How quickly can he adjust to be like, okay, now we're our whole philosophy's changed because now we have someone that can protect on this side. We don't have to leave a tight end over there. Or maybe this guy develops. Who knows? I think that's a big question. Defensively, huge question over there is, okay, yeah, you dumped 2 first-round picks into edge rushers that I really liked, by the way. And Todd Bowles said today in his press conference that Jalen Walker was one of his favorites coming out in the class. But they're rookies. Are they going to be ready to go rip-raring right away? Because that's what the Falcons need. They tried the patch with the Judon Band-Aid last year. I think they have Dante Fowler this year. There's like 3 of those guys.
Yeah.
They're all the same journeyman guys. I always get them confused. And from what I've read and what I've seen, that he's looked good as well. Plans to be part of that rotation, but that's a big question mark for this Falcons team, and has been for the past couple of years. Do they have the edge rushers that can make a difference and really impact games, or are you going to have all day to throw back there and kind of move the ball at will? The other big question. Grady Jarrett's not there, and I get there was regression on his part, but still a big run stopping guy and can get more of a pressure guy, but still a big body that you got to deal with and double teaming when he's down there. And do they have the hosses there now that can step in? So I think there's a lot of questions. The secondary, Jesse Bates is going to be a dog. AJ Terrell's a dog, but there's always been questions about consistency at nickel. With D. Alford and the other cornerback. What did you guys, I think, had Mike Haynes or something
Mike
like that?
Hughes, yeah. Well, Billy Bowman's going to be starting here in this one, too. So you're going to have 2 rookie starters on defense.
And I love Billy Bowman coming out, and I loved Xavier Watts. Those are 2 of my favorite guys coming out, Xavier Watts. So, but again, rookies starting week 1, there's going to be things that they can take advantage of as well. As a season outlook, I think the Falcons are probably right where they were last year. I can tell you exactly where I have them because I just did my rankings. I have them coming in second in the division. I have them at 8 and 9.
Oof.
8 and 9. I have them coming in at
a losing record. I know for a fact is not going to go over super well in this city. Not for a 7th year.
No. Wait, no. I had them in 9 and 8. 9 and 8.
Oh, there you go. Okay, all right. Crisis averted.
9-8. I had the Bucks at 12-5. I have
Okay.
the Falcons at 9-8, Panthers at 7-10, and the Saints at 3-14.
Yeah, well, I know the there will be a lot of people who agree with at least the last two of those here on this channel, but
No, I
no,
just think I think that it's going to take some time, and I think one thing that Arthur Blank doesn't always have is patience. But with Penix, you're gonna have patience. You don't want to rush him too quickly, or have him think he's got to put a cape on because Kirk is still there and go out and do what he's done multiple times in his career and get injured and miss a whole season. Like, you can't have him try and play hero ball. And the best thing you can do is say, hey, we want to compete. We want to go for this division, but like, take it slow. Like, let's not rush this, because if you really truly feel like you have a generational quarterback to the point where you can spend $100+ million on one in the same offseason and then bench that said quarterback because you have a generational quarterback, the longest thing you want to do is screw them up early.
Yep.
So, I think it'll take some time for them to find their footing, but come next year with some smart moves and some progress from Penix, then it might be a dogfight for this division. I just don't see it this year. I actually have the Bucks clinching the division against the Falcons in Week 15.
Well, hopefully it's not that early. Hopefully the Falcons can make a push, and we'll see. We'll see. It should be a fantastic season. I know that Falcons have a lot of questions. I know the Bucks are another good team. They've won the division 4 years in a row, so they've absolutely earned the benefit of the doubt. But JC, I really appreciate you giving us all solid 30 minutes, man. I really, really do appreciate it. Go give him a follow at JC Allen NFL. Go check out his podcast, Pirate Parlay Podcast. Anywhere you get your podcast, and then Bucks reporter and writer for at Bucks Game Day, our sister group, I guess you could say, down there in Tampa. But JC, really appreciate you, man.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on. See you in a minute.
Yes, sir.